Okay, I want you to picture two things for me. Just hold them in your mind.
All right, I'm ready.
On one hand, you have this dusty, crumbling scroll from the 2nd century. It's talking about a blind god who creates a flawed universe.
Okay, ancient theology. Got it.
And on the other hand, a pristine server farm, right now, in 2024, just humming away, training a massive AI.
Cutting-edge engineering. They feel like they belong in completely different worlds.
They really do. But the whole proposition in the sources we're covering today is that they aren't different.
Not just similar, but the same.
The exact same. The argument is that if you strip away the skin, the symbols, the myth, the silicon, all of it,
Yeah.
you are looking at the exact same operational sequence.
That first step, that's a huge claim. And just to be super clear for everyone, we aren't talking about metaphor here.
No, this is not poetry.
We're not saying, oh, isn't that a nice parallel? The sources are arguing for something they call structural isomorphism.
Structural isomorphism. It sounds so technical, but what we're really doing today is building a kind of Rosetta Stone for reality, aren't we?
That's a perfect way to put it. In math, an isomorphism is just a one-to-one mapping. You have two things that look totally different, but they preserve the exact same relationships underneath.
And the sources give us a tool to find that mapping. They call it the isomorphic decoder.
And it's not a theory of everything, which is important. It's not a new philosophy.
Right.
It's a tool, a functional reduction operator. Its only job is to take a system, any system,
A myth, an AI, a person.
your own experience of grief, a political movement, and strip away all the stories until only the regulatory skeleton is left.
So we're looking for the logic, the architecture holding it all together. And the promise here, I think, is that once you have this decoder, you stop getting so distracted by the story.
Yes, whether it's a story about ancient gods or a story about your own personal failings.
You stop asking, is this story true? And you start asking,
Is this system viable?
I love that. It shifts everything from philosophy to systems engineering. So let's formalize this. How does the tool actually work? Step 1 is function extraction.
Right. Remove the skin. And honestly, this is the hardest part for people. You have to look at something, a religion, a machine, anything, and completely ignore the characters.
Ignore the heroes and villains.
Ignore the moral labels, the emotional tone. You just ask one question. What operational roles are being performed here? You're identifying positions in a loop.
And that leads straight to step 2, loop identification.
Exactly. Because the research suggests every viable system of intelligence, biological, digital, doesn't matter. It has to follow this specific 5-step loop, this invariant architecture.
Okay, let's prove it. I want to run a blind test right now. For you and for everyone listening, I've pulled the 5 steps straight from the research. I'm just going to describe the mechanics. No names, no labels.
Okay, do it. Just the mechanics.
All right. Step 1. The system starts out in a state of perfect, undifferentiated potential, total coherence. Step 2. It then generates a simplified internal model to make sense of that potential. But, and this is key, it makes a mistake. It thinks its model is reality.
It thinks it knows everything. Classic.
Step 3. The model runs into something it can't predict. A mismatch. An error.
Reality bites back.
Step 4. This mismatch triggers a catastrophic breakdown. The whole system destabilizes. It's chaos.
Right.
And then step 5, the system finally reintegrates the new data and stabilizes again, but at a higher level of complexity than where it started.
Yep, that is the classic sequence.
What did I just describe?
Well, if I put on my computer science hat, you just described perfectly the training loop of a neural network.
How so?
You start with random weights, that's the potential. It creates a predictive model. It hits a loss function, there's your mismatch. And the chaos, that's gradient descent, the mathematical shaking it needs to update itself.
Spot on. But what if I ask a historian of religion?
Then you have just described, beat for beat, the cosmology of 2nd century Gnosticism.
See, this is where my mind started to bend a little.
It's wild. You have the pleroma, the fullness, the coherence, then the demiurge, the false creator who makes a flawed model of the world, then the fall, the error, and the final reintegration.
And we aren't just saying, hey, neat coincidence. The isomorphic decoder breaks this down component by component. Let's talk about the demiurge. In the myth, he's this arrogant god, blind to the spiritual realm above him.
Right. And in the decoder, the demiurge maps one-to-one with a generative model in AI.
A generative model.
Right.
Why that specifically?
Well, think about what a generative model actually does. It's trained on a very specific data set, and it creates a simulation of the world based only on that data.
Okay.
So if you ask it about something outside its training, what does it do?
It hallucinates. It makes stuff up.
It hallucinates with total confidence. It is structurally blind to anything outside its own parameters.
So the arrogance of the Gnostic god isn't a personality flaw.
No, it's a system limitation. It's overfitting. The demiurge thinks its simulation is the entire universe because it literally does not have the sensors to see beyond it.
And the myth also has these archons, these rulers who try to trap souls and stop them from ascending, which sounds very Dungeons and Dragons.
It does, but the decoder just calls them regulatory feedback loops. They're the system's immune response.
Resisting change.
Exactly. When you try to change a model, the existing structure pushes back. In AI, you call it regularization. In big company, you call it bureaucracy. The archons are just the forces trying to maintain the current stability, even if it's flawed.
And then comes the crash. The Gnostics had a word for it, metanoia.
Which is so often translated as repentance, and that comes with so much moral baggage. But the Greek just means to change one's mind.
To shift the mental model.
It's the destabilizing phase, step 4. It's when the error signal gets so loud the archons can't suppress it anymore. The model has to collapse.
So we've just translated a whole religious drama into a systems update log.
Yes. The demiurge isn't a villain. It's a buggy component.
Yeah.
It's a model that's refusing to update. That's the power of this thing. It turns myths into engineering diagrams.
Okay, but let's bring this down to a human level. Because if this loop coherence, model, mismatch, crash, update, if it's truly universal, it has to apply to us right now.
And the sources are very explicit here. They argue that feeling and computation are just two different languages for the same regulatory pressure.
I think this is where some people might get uncomfortable. We like to think our emotions are these special mystical things, but the decoder is saying my anxiety is just math.
Well, let's reframe that. Is it just math, or is math the clearest language we have to describe the movement of information? The claim is that human distress is functionally identical to a loss function.
Define loss function again, just for someone who doesn't code.
Sure. A loss function in AI is a score. It just tells the machine how wrong its last prediction was. A high score means you are very far from reality. Change your behavior now.
So when I feel that pit in my stomach, that cognitive dissonance, that's just my internal loss function screaming, your map doesn't match the territory.
Exactly. It's an error signal. It's not there to punish you. It's there to trigger an update. But, and this is the most important part, what happens if the system refuses to listen to that signal?
This is what the sources call pathological rigidity. Let's apply the decoder to some human stuff. Let's start with pride, or even narcissism.
Okay, so through the decoder's lens, narcissism is just overfitting.
Overfitting, that's an AI term for when the model learns its training data too well, right? It becomes too rigid.
Perfectly. It creates an inflexible rule. The model step 2 is I am the best, or even I am the ultimate victim. But reality is messy. It keeps providing data that you aren't always the best. That's the mismatch, step 3.
So what does the narcissist do with that mismatch?
They block step 4. They refuse the breakdown at all costs. They manipulate the data to fit the model instead of updating the model to fit the data.
Gaslighting, blame, denial.
All of it. They're error avoidance mechanisms. Structurally speaking, pride isn't a sin. It's a system defense protecting an outdated model from the pain of having to reconfigure.
Wow. Okay, so what about something like innocence?
Innocence is step 1. It's the coherent state. It's the pleroma before the model is formed, before the first mismatch.
A beautiful state.
It is, but the decoder teaches us something really hard here. You cannot stay in step 1. A system must generate a model to interact with the world, and that model must eventually fail. The loss of innocence isn't a tragedy. It's an operational requirement for learning.
Which brings us to grief and trauma. The sources define trauma not as sadness, but as model collapse.
This is such a critical distinction. A bad thing can happen to you and you aren't traumatized. Trauma is when the event is so far outside your predictive model that it shatters the model itself. The error signal doesn't just register, it burns out the whole motherboard.
The generative model just stops generating.
Yes. The person loses their ability to predict the world. That's why trauma survivors feel constantly unsafe. Their internal prediction engine, their demiurge, is broken. They can't map reality anymore.
So if you look at mental health this way, healing isn't about feeling better.
No, it's about rebuilding a predictive model that actually maps to reality again. It's about restoring system viability. Can the system process error without completely collapsing?
I want to scale this up now. We've done the mind, The sources take this exact same tool and point it straight at society, at politics.
And this is where we apply the viability test.
Right. There's a very specific fail-safe rule in the source material for this. It says, if the system denies breakdown, blocks reconfiguration, or claims final stability, it is structurally unsound.
Just think about that for a second. Apply it to any political ideology. What's the core promise of any totalitarian system?
Stability, certainty, the 1,000-year Reich, the end of history. They promise step 1 and step 2 forever.
Exactly. We have the perfect model. We have solved society. But what are they doing structurally?
They are blocking step 4. They are outlawing the destabilizing phase.
They don't allow the update. They censor the press. That's blocking the air signal. They imprison dissenters. That's removing the mismatch. It's like an AI that cuts the wire to its own loss function so it never has to admit it's wrong.
And according to the laws of complex systems, that can't work.
The error doesn't vanish. It accumulates. It builds up as hidden risk. And because the system refuses to make those small, painful updates, the little metanoias, it guarantees an eventual catastrophic collapse.
So something like democracy, with all its messiness and arguing, it's actually structurally stronger.
Far stronger, because it institutionalizes the update loop. An election is a scheduled breakdown. It allows the demiurge, the current administration, to fall and be replaced without destroying the whole system. It respects the cycle.
That's such a powerful idea. Crisis isn't a bug in the system. Breakdown isn't a mistake. It is a necessary feature for the update.
If you try to stop the loop, well, the loop breaks you. We see it in financial markets too. When central banks try to banish volatility, they just store up the energy for a much bigger crash later. You cannot outlaw step 4.
Okay, now for the biggest jump. From politics to the solar system. The sources claim this same architecture applies to the physical universe itself.
This is the idea of recursive reality.
It rolls all the way down.
And all the way up. The hypothesis is that this informational loop organization, breakdown, reorganization, it just repeats at every single scale. Atoms, cells, minds, galaxies, all nested expressions of the exact same process.
And they bring gravity into this. Now, this is where my alarm bells usually go off when people mix consciousness and gravity.
Mine too. It usually ends up in magic. But the argument here is different. It's grounded in information theory, not mysticism. It isn't saying gravity has feelings. It's saying gravity performs a function.
Okay, so what's its function in the decoder?
Constraint management. Simple as that. Look at what gravity does. It pulls matter together. It minimizes the distance between particles. It takes a chaotic cloud of interstellar dust and organizes it into a star.
It reduces entropy.
Exactly. Now look at a brain. It takes a chaotic cloud of sensory data and minimizes the distance between inputs to form a coherent thought. The source argues it's the same operation.
This sounds like John Archibald Wheeler's It from Bit.
That's the one. The idea that information is the fundamental substance of the universe. If that's true, then gravity is just the geometry of that information. It's the universe's loss function, constantly pulling everything toward a more stable, low-energy state.
So whether it's a galaxy forming a star or a human forming a belief, it's all just a system trying to minimize error and find a stable configuration.
That's the synthesis. Intelligence isn't some magic Stark. Intelligence is the efficiency of self-organization. It's the universe trying to get a clearer picture of itself.
This all brings us right back to the personal. Because if this is a law of nature, like gravity, it changes everything about how we should live, especially when things go wrong.
It completely reframes how we look at suffering.
Right. Because when we hit that step 4, that chaotic breakdown where our old life falls apart, our story is, I'm failing, I'm broken, I'm messed up.
But the isomorphic decoder says, no, you are updating. You are in the reconfiguration phase. You literally cannot get from the person you were to the person you need to become without passing through this instability.
It takes the shame out of it. It's not a moral failing. It's just that your old model, your old demiurge, hit a fatal error. It doesn't fit reality anymore.
And this leads to what might be the most hopeful idea in the whole thing, structure remembering itself, or the technical term is state space reentry.
I highlighted this part. It sounds abstract, but the explanation was kind of beautiful. Can you break it down?
It answers the question, how do we heal? When you're in pieces, what pulls you back together? The source says healing isn't some heroic decision you make. It's the system naturally returning to a mathematical attractor.
An attractor, like a gravity well for the psyche.
That's a great analogy. Imagine a landscape of hills and valleys. If you drop a ball anywhere on it, it will eventually roll down and settle in the bottom of a valley. That valley is a low-energy, stable state, and its shape is defined by the system's own architecture.
So when I'm traumatized or lost, I'm like the ball that's been kicked up onto a steep hill?
Yes, you're in a high-energy, unstable state. You're fighting the landscape.
Hmm.
But the valley, your fundamental capacity for coherence, for health, it's still there. Its shape is defined by your biology, your structure. It never went away.
So healing isn't about building a whole new valley. It's about stopping the fight so you can roll back down.
In a sense, yeah. The system remembers its stable form, not through nostalgia, but because the equations that govern it never changed. The constraints that define you are still active. When the disruptive force stops, you naturally fall back into that stable basin.
That really changes how we approach trying to fix ourselves. We always try to think our way out of the chaos, to force it.
Which is often just the Archon trying to put the old broken model back together. Sometimes the most functional thing you can do is just surrender to the gravity of your own nature. Trust that the system is designed to seek coherence.
You return to stability not because you try hard enough, but because the architecture of intelligence itself is designed to seek it.
It gives you a non-sentimental basis for hope. You don't have to invent the solution from scratch. The solution is already encoded in your structure. You just have to let the reconfiguration happen.
Non-sentimental hope. I really like that. It feels durable.
It's the comfort of knowing that you aren't fighting chaos alone. You are a self-organizing system, and self-organization is simply what the universe does.
So, to recap, we started with a 2nd century myth about a blind god. We realized it was a blueprint for training AI, and we saw how that same loop drives our psychology, defines politics, and maybe even organizes the stars.
We've seen that myths aren't just stories, they're compressed engineering diagrams. And our technologies are just mirrors of our own cognition.
And that fallen god is just a generative model that's overdue for an update.
And that real understanding isn't about memorizing facts. It's about recognizing this one repeating pattern. Once you see the loop coherence, model, mismatch, breakdown, reintegration, you start seeing it everywhere.
And that really is the challenge we want to leave you with. Take this isomorphic decoder and point it at your own life. Where are you in the loop right now?
And more importantly, where are you blocking the breakdown? Where are you acting like a little totalitarian regime of one, trying to force an old model to work when the error signal's screaming at you?
Because if there's one lesson from all of this, the physics, the myths, the code, it's that the breakdown isn't the end of the story.
It's just step 4. And step 5 is inevitable if you let the architecture do its work.
It's not interpretation, it's structural reduction. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Until next time.